this world, there are things that people mustn't touch. Who cares?
Hey there guys, welcome to the final episode of Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean. I think this is going to be one of the first times I've actually pronounced its title correctly. I would occasionally get Eternal Wings and Lost Ocean, but I almost never got the in there. So, finally, last episode got the damn title right. For those of you that haven't been with me when I've beaten a game before, you haven't watched these, like, let's discuss episodes at the end, after I beat a game, I usually will stop, research the game a little bit more, learn more about all the stuff that may have confused me, and just kind of get an overall opinion of the games so I can talk from a more intellectual standpoint than at the end where I'm just like, yeah, I beat it, oh my god! Because very often, whenever I finally get to the end of a game, I'm very excited, but not necessarily, I haven't had time to be analytical, and I'd like to make another episode where I can be analytical. So, in this episode, we're going to be talking about exactly that. We're going to be talking about what makes the game work, what prevents the game from working to a certain degree, and what kinds of things can the game do to become better. The first and foremost thing I'm going to talk about is the battle system, and I'm going to say, well actually, before even that, I like the game. I'm going to be kind of critical of a lot of aspects of it in this, but just because there's things of it that aren't perfect doesn't mean the game itself is bad. I did very much enjoy playing the game, especially the last bit. After the first twist happened, the game got immensely better. So let me just say that right going in, that way people don't get the impression that I just hated playing this thing, because oh my gosh, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is bad. No, it's just sitting here and being like, yeah, that was awesome, is not advancing any narrative. I like to talk about real issues, and so that's what I'm going to do. So, first of all, obviously the voice acting is terrible. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because, frankly, after the first episode, you guys are like, oh my god, turn the voice acting off right now. And you were absolutely right. And the battle system, I'm going to compliment. There are certainly problems with it. It is entirely too random. For anyone that hasn't played it, it is kind of like a deck builder game, where you will go out, you will pick which cards you want in your deck, but then the order that you draw them in is just like any other deck builder game, completely random. The reason this becomes such an issue in this game is that some of your cards are defense cards. And so if whatever you're fighting doesn't attack with that specific character, their hand gets clogged up with defense cards. And they can't do anything with them. So they just are sort of useless until they get attacked. And that's a big issue. I can't tell you the number of battles that I eventually won, but they took forever because the boss kept focusing on two of my characters, so I had a just deadweight third character in that particular fight that never got to do anything. I feel like, and maybe this is just me, but I feel like there was a problem in how it approached the second and third and fourth spirit numbers, because at the beginning of the game, when you have very, very low valued attacks, they've only got a single spirit number. And so you never actually learn how to select spirit numbers by using the C-stick, you just select the card. It's only got one number, who cares? And whenever they started throwing second ones in there, I don't really remember it coming back and saying, hey, you've got a second, these things have multiple numbers on them now. You can select it this way. It may have, but it didn't really impress itself upon me. It wasn't kind of towards the end of the game that I really started paying attention to that, and I only really started attention to that with Malpersio. And lastly, let's talk about the Malpersio fight slightly. I did find the difficulty jump for the Malpersio fight a little bit unreasonable. I'm not going to say I thought the Malpersio fight was too hard. I'm going to say that it was a little bit frustrating that I could get through the entire damn game without mastering a lot of the game's core concepts, and then Malpersio just beat me over the head until I mastered them. On the one hand, you do want the final boss to be a test of all of the game's, subsystems and really be the final challenge, but I don't feel like I should have been able to. I feel like I should have run into the you're not playing the game correctly wall before the final boss of the game. So that was a little bit frustrating. I completely deserved to lose against Malpersio because I wasn't playing effectively. I just kind of wish that it had, I loved fighting Malpersio. It was so much fun looking for those combos, and I wish the game had forced me to do that earlier. So, but for the rest of this episode, we're going to be talking about the plot, because I don't want to sit here and talk badly about the game mechanics, because I really, Yes, they're unpolished, but of course they're unpolished. This is the first game that tried a system like that. And so the fact that I am never going to fault a game for trying to innovate. If you try something new and you're not perfect at it, well, too freaking bad. I'd rather you try than just stick with what's already been established. So, Baten Kaitos tried something new. It was a little bit unpolished. There were some problems with it, but you know what? My hat's off to the game anyway. Good job. That said, that does not save it from the plot, because the plot of the game had problems. Primarily, the problem that it had... Well, okay, there's 3 problems I want to talk about. Firstly, let me talk about the false... Actually, before I get to that, fair disclaimer, if you're watching this and you have not played Baten Kaitos, I'm going to be talking about the plot in some significant detail, and it will involve... I mean, one of the things I want to talk about is the ending of the game. So, if you haven't played it and you want to, stop watching. If you haven't played it but you don't plan to play it, or, you are interested in and you don't care about spoilers, I will be explaining a lot of the background stuff, so you won't necessarily be lost, but I wanted that disclaimer going in. So one of the things I want to talk about is the game's false ending. Again, I'm going to be comparing it to Final Fantasy VI, because I got really, really, really annoyed whenever I thought the game was going to end with me fighting with Emperor Gello at the end of the 5th island. The whole game, it has been exploration of these 5 islands, getting the 5 End Magnus. We are going to stop Emperor Gello and take the last of the Magnus from him, and that was going to be the end of the game. The game had been playing it pretty generically so far, and I expected that to be the end. And when it wasn't, I got a little frustrated. I got a little mad. I was ready for this game to be over. And I got to thinking about, why is that? Why is that the case? Why is it that all of a sudden I'm going to go from, when I beat Tales of the Abyss and it had a fake out ending, I didn't care. I was fine with it. Same thing with Suikoden 2. Same thing with Final Fantasy VI. What is it about Baten Kaitos that made its fake out ending frustrating for me? Well, what I've decided it is that it was a fake-out ending wherein I don't really feel like the stakes rose significantly. I'm going to compare it to Final Fantasy VI because I feel like that's the game that most of you have already played. I don't want to spoil a fake-out for games you may not have played, and Final Fantasy VI is certainly the most mainstream of the RPGs that have fake-out endings that I can think of. So, with Final Fantasy VI, you're going through, you're the returners, you're trying to stop the Empire, you lead a, revolt against the Empire gets messed up, they want peace. Except they don't really want peace, they actually want to control all the Espers. They go to the Isle of Magic, you go there to stop them, and it's this pivotal, great moment where you're trying to stop the Emperor. Emperor ends up getting killed by Kefka, you flee, and the world gets destroyed. Kefka takes over. So, after the fake-out ending, where you feel like the island is going to be the end of the game, you feel like that's going to be the final confrontation between you and the Emperor. When it's not, the entire freaking world got rewritten. Things are terrible. The towns are getting destroyed by Kefka. The second part of the game, they certainly raised the stakes significantly. Whereas in Baten Kaitos, well, yes, they do have a little bit of that, where Malpersio comes back and there's, attacks going on at all the cities. There's only one place in the entire game I even saw any attacks happening. When you go to the, fisherman's hometown, and Gibari, ends up having to save that town from a couple of attacks. Other than that, you keep being told that Malpersio's castle is returned, and, we're having to fight pitched battles everywhere, but it's never really sold to you. You never really believe it. The vast majority of the game is completely unchanged. Additionally, after that happened, they then go on and it's like, well, we'd better go to the, witch village of the frozen wastes and see if they can help us. We better go to the Taint Clouds and talk to them, and it's just like 2 more areas that are almost exactly like the areas that had come before. It's just like you have this fake-out ending that wasn't really the ending, and then the game just sort of continues at the same pace. I didn't really feel like the stakes got raised, and so I was just sort of left like with a, oh, I guess I'm still playing. Whereas with Final Fantasy VI, whenever the whole game shifted. It was a new world, things were bad, Kefka had taken over, you felt like there was you still felt like the ending, although it didn't end the game, had some weight to it, had some enormity to it. And I don't feel like Baten Kaitos really sold that to me. They tried. Like I said, they did talk about how Kor Hadre had risen and, reformed, and there were monsters attacking everywhere. But since the majority of the game, nothing was really changed and everything looked the exact same, it was just like, I didn't buy into it. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm still going. So that was a bit of a problem. If you're going to do a fake ending to a game, you've got to make sure that the ending has weight. If you're not going to let the game end, you've still got to make it change the status quo. And when the vast majority of your game is still the exact same, then you haven't handled the ending very well. So that's the first issue I had. And it's probably the most minor issue. Second issue I have is Callus. So again, for anyone that hasn't played it, there's a point in the game where you learn... Let me go back slightly, if you haven't played it before. Baten Kaitos does something that's really, really awesome, and let me just tip my hat to it real quick. Baten Kaitos puts you in the game as an actual character. At the very beginning of the game, you learn that there's this area where the rifts between the world is thin, and you are a spirit from another dimension that has become interested in Callus and has come into this world. It's obviously kind of meant to be a, hey, you're, an acknowledgement that you, the player, are not really part of this world. And a revelation comes through that Callus has erased some of your memories in order to trick you because he was secretly working for the actual final boss, or the pseudo-final boss of the game. And so, about 2/3 of the way through the game, Callus basically turns evil. He goes back to the final boss, he betrays his friends, allows them to be captured, he severs his connection with you, and just becomes super emo and gothy, and, is actively working towards the end of the world. And then the game does something very, very, very frustrating and odd. It shifts, it has you establish a link with Zelha, who is the leading female character. It has Zelha then go around and break out of prison, partially through your help. It is definitely implied that you are able to sort of manifest and affect the fates of the people you bond with. So with your help, Zelha breaks out of prison and proceeds to break out the other members of your party, except for Callus. Then she goes on this quest in order to, find enough stuff in order to let Callus break free. And then she goes and ultimately does break Callus free of the control of the actual final boss of the game. And then the game shifts back and makes Callus the main character. Here's why that frustrates me. Number one, you have this great little moment where there's an actual betrayal of your party members, which is kind of awesome. Then, after the betrayal happens, the entire narrative shifts and you get a new main character because obviously the one you were at has betrayed you. You play through their storyline, but as soon as their storyline, you resume the status quo, they are immediately demoted back to being side character. I really felt like Zelha should have taken over as the main character. In her arc, we find out she's the head of the Ice Witches, and she's a super important person, but as soon as Callus comes back online, she just kind of starts deferring to his judgment again. And it was really, really dumb. I think it would have been way more interesting if one of two things have happened. One, let Callus stay evil. I think the whole idea of having you spend the first half of the game with someone that had secretly erased your memories would have been awesome. That would have been, a great, great, great twist, especially if there was a few things that, because they actually did this a few times. They're like, hey, do you remember this? And you had the option of either saying you did or you didn't, but, that would have been like a subtle clue to the fact that, yeah, you kind of should have remembered this, but you didn't because your memories were gone. So, and they kind of did that, and it would have been a great little, it would have really made the story engaging and interesting, where it's actually dynamic and it's not doing things just the average and the normal way. I think it would have been cool if they had just left Callus being evil. Obviously, they couldn't have had necessarily all the parts of his storyline that they had, because he ended up being instrumental in beating the final boss. But that would have been awesome. Alternatively, if you want to bring Callus back to the side of good, then don't do this whole weird side story with Zelha, where she's getting everyone out. Instead, have some areas where Callus has to go around, attack some cities in the name of Malpersio, and then you see him, you're there and you can yell at him to wake up and he'll stop and he'll hold his head, and then you get like a flashback into, his childhood and him hanging out with his brother and stuff like that, and then he shakes his head and he goes and do that like 2 or 3 times, and then finally he's ordered to execute Zelha and the others, and after that flashback is with the penultimate scene where he will just shake his head, reach back, rip his wing out as a ultimate sign of no, I'm not doing this anymore, and let Callus be the one that breaks him out. When you have Zelha be instrumental in Callus coming back to normal, and then get relegated back to a character that doesn't really matter, and everything shifts back to focusing on Callus, it just really makes me feel sorry for Zelha, frankly. If you're going to make Zelha into a main character, then make her into a bloody main character, man. So, that was the frustrating thing for me there. I feel like they wanted to do something interesting, and they did something very interesting, but it left me feeling incomplete. And then lastly, the biggest issue, because again, like I said, I'm kind of building from the things that bother me the least to the things that bother me the most. At the end of the game, it is revealed that Zelha, as the leader of the Ice Witches, is in control of the incantation to bring the ocean back into the world. For whatever reason, whenever the world was elevating to the sky, the ocean was locked away. We don't really know why. It's sort of explained, but not really. And so, for some reason, when she uses this incantation to bring the ocean back, she dies. Again, we don't really know why. But after you do it, then the whale will return, and a whole bunch of little dolphins will assemble the parts of Zelha, the mystical, not like literally her limbs and stuff, but the mystical, magical bits of Zelha, and the whale will bring her back to life. And it's seriously, within 5 minutes, she dies and comes back in the epilogue of the game. It is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And I am convinced that someone was like, hey, Final Fantasy VII did really well because they killed off one of their main characters. We should totally do that in the end, but not really do it. We should just act like we're going to kill off the main character and get everyone to be all shocked, and then when she comes back, it'll be this great moment. No, it won't. Because A, when I did that, I was like, well, that's freaking stupid. Why in the world does bringing the ocean back cause Zelha to die? B, why does... it's like, she dies for no real reason, and when she comes back, you're like, well, of course she's going. You're not going to. A game like this, you're not going to kill someone off in the epilogue. That's completely stupid and an utter downer. What you should be doing is, if you're going to kill off a character, you need to do it during the narrative, having them do something heroic, not in the epilogue of a game and be like, oh well, I have to bring the ocean back, but that'll kill me. So it just you don't have time. When I played Tales of Vesperia, there's a moment where one of your party members is killed. I'm going to try and keep it somewhat vague, because I know some of you haven't played Vesperia. But when you play, there's a moment where one of your party members gets killed, but within like 20 minutes, they come back. And I remember just being like, dude, if you're going to do that, you have to give me some time to struggle with it. You have to give me some time to really think about their sacrifice and what that means to me, and is that okay? When you bring them back too quickly, it just leaves the entire experience feeling like a sham, and like, we're going to try and make a deeply impactful game, and so we're going to cause you to wrestle with character death, but only for a few minutes. It's just, So, my advice on that one, my advice there is just completely get rid of that. If you want to, you can leave it just fine. Just say that she's in charge of the incantation to bring back the ocean, so she and Callus have to do the incantation together, because she doesn't have enough power to do it herself. Or hell, have her just say that, she, doesn't have the power to unleash the ocean. It's really, really dangerous, but she thinks she has to do it. And then you have Mizuti, the great Mizuti, the one who's been kind of prophesized to be this reborn mage, coming in and be like, oh, you can have some of my power. And then Savnia comes in and is like, hey, you can have some of mine too. And so you have this moment where all of the party gets together in order to lend Zelha some of their essence and their energy, and boom, she has enough power, she brings the ocean back. You have a nice, satisfying moment of party cohesion. You can even have the different leaders get in on it, you know? Have it be a really great moment of the world really coming together again in order to rebuild itself. And that would be a genuinely smiling moment of, look at all these different nations that used to dislike and distrust each other. They kind of did that whenever you unlocked Cor Hadray, but they could do it again here. Instead, they do this really stupid Zelha died, except she comes back so fast that you're just left kind of feeling insulted that they even try that moment, so... And plus, the other thing about that, and the reason it doesn't work, I know I'm just sort of rambling here, but I also really felt like the whole reveal that she was the head of the... Well, not really reveal she was head of the Ice Witches, but that the incantation that she's been taught will kill her, sort of comes out of nowhere. You know, they had talked a lot about her, you know, power being passed down from her mother to daughter forever, and her being the, like, last of the witches, but that was just because she didn't have any kids yet. And so now, it just, it didn't work. It did not work. I don't know what else to say other than it did not work. So, that's it. That is Baten Kaitos and my kind of final thoughts on it. I know I don't have any, like, deep thoughts, but there were just a lot of things in the plot of that game that I did not... I like where the game went overall. I thought it was very interesting overall. I very much enjoyed playing it, but there was a lot of it just seemed like forced melodrama that went on with this game. And that was not very... They wanted to create an epic RPG, and they did, and then they just started copying elements of other people's RPGs, is sort of what it felt like. We made this great game, now, let's have let's go ahead and have a betrayal in here. That was the other thing. They kept talking about how someone, I get it now, because when you were in Mirror, they kept talking about how someone was betraying the party and trying to figure out who it was. And that was actually well done. Because when it's revealed that the main character, you were the one betraying the party, it was super, super interesting. But even with that said, it did get kind of frustrating because I'm like, why are you assuming that someone betrayed the party rather than it got stolen? You know, what the hell? I think it would have worked a lot better is if it got stolen multiple times in front of me. They're like, okay, dude, this can't be a coincidence. There's someone's tipping him off. I think it would have been handled better than the first time it ever got stolen, and you're just like, what? Type of thing. Anyway, that being said, the final verdict on Baten Kaitos, good game, worth playing, but I've heard Origins is much better. I'm very much looking forward to playing Origins, but I won't be playing it immediately. The next couple of games on the personal queue are Star Ocean, till the End of Time, and Undertale. So look forward to those, guys. I'm looking forward to them.